just so that anybody interested in this position has an opportunity to have a conversation with a few of us. Mr. McDonald may have some questions. I certainly do. And this is being streamed live so that folks in the community, anyone's interested in the media, other board members can certainly listen in as well. With that, again, Mr. McDonald, thanks for joining the discussion. Jump in at your leisure. So Scott, what we'll do is, thank you for your interest. Can you go ahead and just kind of introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and why you're interested in this position, and we'll just take it from there.
Sure. Yeah. Scott Anderson. I've been a resident of Rockton, Illinois, in District 4 for I guess about 15 years now, and have a long history of working in the community and manufacturing and operations activities. I am also an active community member, serving on multiple community organization roles and community initiatives across the county and across the region, and have a strong interest in the advocacy of our community, the health of our community and our county, and in particular District 4 of Winnebago County.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about a little more detail about your professional background.
Sure. So I am a operations executive. I currently serve as a global director of group engineering and operations for a company called Sensient, and work with a team of engineers across the globe in the food ingredient business. I've also worked in the Rockford area for Phelps Pet Products as director of operations, where we stabilized the workforce, grew the business, and certainly helped contribute to the local economy. The local economy and the existing tax base. Spent almost a decade with the Rust-Oleum Corporation, which of course Rockfordians would know by the Tester brand name. Testers is a company that's been in Rockford for almost 100 years. And again, had great results in terms of stabilizing operations turnaround, and improvement is what I do. So we were able to really save a business that might not otherwise have stayed in Rockford, and in fact brought other Rust-Oleum paint and coating operations from other places in the United States to Rockford, again contributing to a stable local workforce and a strong tax base. First came to the area with a company that folks would know by the Hefty brand name, and have international experience as well. And before that, a long history of engineering, enterprise management, and operational leadership.
Okay, thank you. How about your community involvement?
I've been quite active. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Just anything on that.
Yeah, so a long history of community involvement. I've been a long-term member of a organization called Next Rockford, which advocates for the Rockford region in terms of improvements to our region, and in fact, am a past facilitator or leader of that organization. I was one of the original team leads for the process and analysis team for Transform Rockford, really setting the stage for the activities and processes that the teams use to set the strategies and visions. Been a member of through both Rust-Oleum and Phelps, the Rockford Chamber of Commerce, and have served on the Government Affairs Committee. I am currently the board president of Jackson Charter School, which is an important component of the Rockford Public School District, offering choice and alternatives to the standard model for families in our county community or in the district. I am also a board member and past president of Black Hawk Early Childhood Education Center, which serves some of our families in need on early childhood education and helping them set the stage to be able to move from point A to point B. And I also led the original facility referendum for Hananiga on the fall campaign on the spring campaign, and then ultimately that led to the fall campaign and the successful investment in that school and in District 4 of Winnebago County.
Very good. When you talk about county government, I guess I'll get to a very direct question because it's come up, so you're a candidate for filling the District 4 seat, which makes up part of South Beloit and also part of Rockton. You're applying for this position at the very same time that you're directly engaged in litigation with the county. To not address that directly, I think would be disrespectful to this conversation. This is a very important appointment for our board. This is, all of the districts in Winnebago County are important, but at the same time, I want to speak directly to that issue. If we're going to bother to have discussions and have Zoom meetings and public conversations, we might as well talk about issues that are beneath the surface that we just want to put out there. And what are your thoughts on that alignment of that dispute with your interest in serving on the board?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an important question as well. I think that an effective county board needs to have clarity on the appropriate legal approaches that can be taken. We certainly have a perception that there's an awful lot of legal question surrounding the county board activities. And I think we strongly need clarity. And I especially think as a Republican that it's really our job to hold government accountable. And this really was a gut check on understanding what is the clarity and the legal definition that we need to understand what is the appropriate role of government and what is the appropriate functioning of the county board. So that's why I thought it was important to get that question answered and why I participated in that lawsuit. Clearly, it would be a conflict of interest for any sitting county board member to be a participant in that lawsuit. If I was selected as the successful candidate, I would withdraw from that lawsuit prior to being seated.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk community. Your reaction in general terms, because county board members are asked by the media, asked by other community leaders their thoughts on a range of opinions. What's your thought about the overall community response related to the COVID-19 pandemic? Anything that is of, we're all concerned, but anything of particular concern, anything that you think is going well or poorly? This is the topic that everybody's talking about. County board members get asked this stuff all the time. What are your thoughts? What are your concerns about the COVID response?
Yeah, certainly. Certainly every single one of us, all of our county citizens and constituents are facing something that we've never experienced or comprehended before, and are learning every day about how we should respond to this situation. The health and safety of our citizens and our constituents is critically important. And I think we need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect that health and safety. At the same time, we have to recognize that the measures that we've taken to protect health and safety do have significant economic impact. And we need to understand how we can limit the damage while protecting the health and safety of our citizens. And more importantly, once we come out of this current situation and have to quickly recover and rebuild our economy, I think that's really when we need to have a county board that collaborates amongst the board and collaborates with our community partners and our state and federal support partners in how we recover quickly. I bring to the table obviously a strong history in manufacturing and operations, business and economic expertise in executive leadership roles. I have relationships and history of collaboration with entities that would be important as we construct a recovery strategy. And I think I can help with the board in terms of our collaborative focused approach and partnerships, and quickly serving our constituents and our small businesses and our local businesses in a quick recovery from this situation.
Thank you. County government has many departments. It's a rather nuanced, interesting form of government. What would be your priorities as a board member if you became the appointed District 4 rep? You walk in with a perspective. You got a background, but you also have perspective. Things that are important to you. What would be some things that are important to you when you look at our county departments? What are some priorities over the next year, outside of the COVID-related discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly though, I'm going to start with sort of related to what we talked about with the COVID situation. The number one priority for our constituents and our citizens in the county and in the district is their safety. We don't accomplish anything if we're unsafe or feel unsafe, which means that we have to have a highly functioning and partnered relationships with our county sheriff and department, and the municipal entities that we partner with in making sure that our community is safe. And all of that has to be done in a fiscally responsible manner, which sets the stage, obviously, for our second priority was making sure that we have an environment that fosters appropriate economic development, and that's done in constructive ways, and that we manage and direct the resources we have, such as our economic development funds. I think in the immediate and short term, which will be on COVID recovery and consideration of supporting those existing entities in that recovery, which would be economic development, but also longer term, in that we're doing true value creation and continuing to build our community, creating jobs for our citizens, and continuing to build and expand our tax base so that we can have the resources that we need to make sure that we're effectively but appropriately funding our county departments, and that we have a structured and planned infrastructure and capital investment program. Again, that is fiscally responsible, but recognizes that those capital structures in terms of roadways and other services are appropriate to support our citizens and our businesses in our community.
You mentioned some things that require investment and funding priority. We're obviously, tomorrow night we have a finance meeting, and we're going to look very closely for the first time at projected adjusted revenues related to this COVID situation that's unfolding. But you did at the same time talk about some priorities, some things that would require funding priority. One of the toughest things that I've seen our board and all of us go through is being clear on priorities, but also finding funding for that when the budget is very tight. At a time we just saw the community enthusiastically pass a mental health tax at the last election. That money is designated for mental health funding going forward. What is your appetite? What is your openness to matching funding priority with other revenue discussions? Because the new board member is going to be seated and go through a very unique budget cycle. We adopt a budget October 1, as you may know, but the budget cycle begins, effectively tomorrow night because of the COVID situation. What is your position? Is there any thoughts on your position on budget going into a situation where we're not going to have an abundance of money? We will likely have a shortfall. Projections are going to be far worse than projected because of all that's changed.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, a vast majority of my career has been based on operational turnaround. So certainly in a private versus public application, but very similar in terms of operations and organizations that were faced with significant financial challenges. What's effective in those cases is making sure that we have a crisis response plan, which is how do we take care quickly to address the current issues, and at the same time making sure that we have a strategic plan. That strategic plan needs to comprehend not only how do we fix the crisis, but how we really enter a period of growth and opportunity. So we must be fiscally responsible. We must make the appropriate decisions of how we're allocating our limited resources, and that when we're making those decisions, we're thinking about how that creates future opportunity. The answer to our fiscal challenges is not taxing more. The answer to our fiscal challenges is significant economic growth, and we need to have strategies that are aligned to that, so that the needs of our citizens and our communities that the county should appropriately provide are more easily and appropriately resourced without creating burden on our citizens, property owners, and businesses.
One of the topics that comes up, I think in every campaign cycle, it comes up frequently on our county board, is host fees. As you know, host fees came about from the importing of garbage to a landfill, and we get a fee called a host fee for county, and it's been used for a variety of projects over the years. What are your general thoughts on host fees, how you've seen those spent in your time watching all things county government? What are your thoughts on any changes that should occur? Any thoughts on the host fee fund purpose, intent to go forward?
Yeah, I'm not so interested in commentating on what has been done in the water and the bridge. I'm very interested in what we can do on a go forward basis. And I think that, again, emphasizing that as we're making these decisions and how we collect and allocate resources, and specifically to the host fund program, we really need to have a strategic plan. We need to have recognition of what we think the future projections of those available funds are, given the future plans of the landfill, its capacities, the challenges that creates for our community, and how we respond and address those. And once we understand and recognize that, then we need to have a strategic plan built in collaboration and partnership with our community that recognizes that economic development needs to be foundational and substantive change. That's not moving dominoes from one area of our county to another, but is truly setting the stage and or creating actual business growth that, again, has the opportunity to expand the tax base, which allows those resources to be spread and the impact and pain on our citizens, property owners, and businesses to be mitigated, while at the same time continuing future services and ongoing incremental economic development.
One of the things that has been talked about in at least a couple of open meetings, not in any specificity and not in an area where there's been any action brought forward, but in this current environment where we're looking at, an evolving budget situation, it has been suggested in a few open meetings about taking the host fee funds and using that for internal purposes for the near term, whether that's a year or two, or perhaps beyond that. I'm sure opinions are not monolithic. There may be a variety of opinions. What are your thoughts about that specific fund and any changes in direction based on financial pressures?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it needs to be recognized that economic recovery is economic development. And so as we have conversations in the near term, we need to consider what is the economic recovery plans, what resources are available, and how are those targeted and appropriately positioned to help our community recover. And I think that includes consideration of support for our existing property owners, including our single-family citizens. It also includes our real estate and landlord property owners. It includes our small businesses, especially our local small businesses, and our other medium and large businesses. And recognizing that on a short-term, resources do need to be pivoted and aligned to ensure that we stop any additional catastrophic decline, B, that we quickly have economic recovery, which is economic development, and then sets the stage for more foundational and fundamental strategic investment once we're past the crisis.
Good. Mr. McDonald, do you want to jump in on any questions? You're welcome to anytime you want to. Whenever you unmute, you just jump on in.
Sure. I thank you. My wife and son's just getting home from work and school and such, so I kept myself on mute. I would just address the federal lawsuit and the fact that you've got a majority of the board as named defendants in the federal lawsuit. How many yes votes for confirmation would you expect to get given the scenario?
Yeah, I addressed that earlier. So my participation in the federal lawsuit was solely driven by the fact that I believed that we needed legal clarity. Again, I believe that a highly functioning county board, and particularly in our role as Republicans, has to ensure that we have legal clarity on how the board can function, that we're keeping government in check, that we're keeping government accountable, and that we're getting that question answered. And I think that needs to come from perhaps a more independent ruling and source. And that's why my name is on that lawsuit. Keith, as I stated earlier, it would clearly be inappropriate for a sitting county board member to be a participant in that lawsuit. And if I was selected as the successful candidate, I would withdraw from that lawsuit prior to being seated.
And I appreciate that gesture. I think I can speak for several of the board members. Our memories go back further than that. We're already a little bit gun shy given the circumstances. So as a professional courtesy, I'm sitting in with the interview, but I don't know that I think it's going to go very far.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your candor, honesty, and transparency. And I think that a highly functioning county board has all three of those characteristics. And that when we can speak that way, and we can do that with dignity and respect, it's okay if we disagree. And in fact, it's better if we disagree. Our founding fathers debated contentiously on how we ought to create the original structure. And that drove to better ideas and the systems that we have today, which includes a systems of checks and balances, which is critical and important to our governmental structure. My interest in participation was really, again, in a gut check of what is our systems, what are our processes, and how do we move that forward. So I appreciate and understand that we might disagree on the approach. I do believe that fundamentally it's foundational to our American system, and particularly to our Republican Party in our responsibility for holding our government accountable and ensuring that we have checks and balances in place and that we're doing those appropriate gut checks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. Follow up on, so at the last election, the community passed this mental health tax. And so you're going to see a new revenue stream related to mental health funding that did not exist at all before, not completely unlike the 1% public safety sales tax back, 15, 20 years ago. There's been debate. At the end of the day, the county board, like many other boards around the state of Illinois, has the tax dollars pass through the county. What would, the community, the discussions that occurred around the mental health tax. The question isn't, at the end of the day, how much could the county board control those dollars? My question for you is more of a philosophical, not a legal one. How much autonomy should the mental health board be given now that they're seated around the allocating of those dollars once dollars start to flow in?
Yeah, sorry, Chairman Haney, you started to break up there a little bit. But if I understood the context of the question surrounding the recently approved mental health referendum, first of all, mental health is a critical need in our community. And I think our citizens recognize that. And the overwhelming support for investing resources in addressing that need. And the understanding of the impact that mental health and related behaviors have in our community and the need of our citizens. I commend the board for their selection and placement of the initial mental health board members. I think it's a very strong group of very highly qualified, capable, interested folks that I think can really get us off on the right foot and get things started. I think it's important to recognize the role of governance. So boards, county boards should really be setting direction and strategy and resource allocation and enabling the organizations, including the departments and entities like the mental health board to do their jobs. If we provide the direction, we provide the resources, we put the right people in place, then we ought to allow them to do what they do. Again, recognizing that there is a need for accountability, monitoring, and appropriateness.
Okay, thank you. What questions do you have, Scott, for either Mr. McDonald or myself about the county, about county board, about this process, anything like that?
Well, I think I understand the process. I appreciate that. I'm fairly well versed in the county board, the members, the county government. I believe I understand clearly the selection process. Keith, to your point, this is an important process. The selection of the right candidate is critical. And I think, Keith, you're probably not only thinking about what is the interim solution, but what is the solution for the upcoming fall election as well. So as candidates are evaluated, I think it's important to note that I have campaign experience, I have campaign structure in place. I'm committed to continuing to fulfill the seat past the November 20th or November 2020 election. I've been a strong advocate in the district, have good name recognition, am able to gather resources and have the appropriate supporting or appropriate support to be a strong candidate in the fall and ensure that the seat remains in party control.
The question, I guess one or two final questions, Scott, is we have some board members who, and this is just feedback I've received from board members. Some certainly when they talk about representing their district, they talk about representing their district first, the entire county second. Others say the exact opposite. And I'm not suggesting there's a right or wrong answer, but a county board member has a unique role of representing a group of constituents solely almost, and then also being part of a larger team and looking across the entire county in every governing decision. How do you see that dynamic of balancing district interests, district needs with the larger needs of the entire community?
Yeah, the legislative and representative role, which is really the closest example of the county board. We are elected to represent the constituents and cities of our district. And we need to be strong listeners to the constituents in our district and hearing their needs and making sure that we're responding to those. So the primary role of an elected representative is to represent the constituents of their district. Now, just like a state representative or a federal representative, you participate in a body that serves a larger collective. And that's why it's important to have demonstrated history and capabilities and techniques of collaboration and partnership to make sure that while we are primarily serving our constituents, that is always with consideration of the overarching need of the entire entity, in this case, the county.
Good. Mr. McDonald, any other follow-up questions you have at this time?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, good. Scott, any other follow-up questions or any other questions you have for us at this time?
No, I'm very good. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. I really appreciate it and am honored and humbled to be a part of the process.
Well, thank you very much, Scott, for your time, and we'll be following up shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So as Scott exits from the Zoom interview, we have one more additional interview with Mike Vaughn. We'll go ahead and get him set up, and then we'll continue with the live stream when he is set and ready to go. So thank you. We'll ask anybody that's watching via live stream to check back in just a couple of minutes, and we'll go from there. Thank you. Yeah, Mike, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. Keith will be with us. Mr. McDonald will be with us here in just a second.
Okay.
Just to recap, for just so you hear it maybe even a second time, is, back on March 12th, board member in District 4 resigned from and vacated his county board seat. That immediately puts into process the vacancy replacement process that's a little bit driven by state statute. We've advertised this publicly. We did have more than one candidate show interest in this position. So tonight what'll happen, Mike, and I do see that Mr. McDonald has joined us, and I believe you know Keith, but Keith has been a board member for multiple years now, and he's also our newly elected Republican caucus chair. But Mike, what'll happen is we're just having an interview that we've posted and made available to the community so folks can watch if they choose to via stream, a live stream. I know these are interesting times with the COVID stuff, but this is the best way we could make folks who are interested and that we're talking to about filling the position available for kind of a slightly more formal conversation. I'm sure there's informal ones going on as well in this process. So want to say thank you very much for your interest. I'm going to ask you, go ahead and hit the video part so we can have you see pop up on screen there. And thank you. I'll do the same thing. So go ahead, Mike, if you can just introduce yourself to us. Tell us a little bit about your background. And then if you could, and we'll probably have some follow-ups on it, talk a little bit about why you're interested in serving on the county board at this time. And again, thank you very much for your interest.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for the chance to interview with you. Again, my name is Mike Vaughn. I was born and raised in Winnebago County. I'm a native to Winnebago County. I grew up on the south side of Rockford, Cherry Valley area to be exact. Basically, I was raised by a single mom. Grew up through there, graduated from Jefferson High School. And from there, I kind of did a few odds and ends jobs. And then I found my way into doing HVAC with Richard J. Bowers and such, and Pearson's after that. And then I started my own company in 2000 called Advanced Heating and Air. I have three children. I'm born and raised here again. I have 3 children, got one in college. I got one that recently made me a grandpa, which was pretty awesome. So that's pretty cool. And then I have a younger son that's 10 years old. Again, recently moved from Cherry Valley into Roscoe area. I'm looking at filling the need for the board member. I think it's an awesome thing that I could apply for. And that's pretty much it about myself.
So you have an interesting background where you have your first responder background and also business, private sector business. If you can give a little more detail about those experiences there if you can.
Yeah. First and foremost, I was a fireman for 25 years with the Cherry Valley Fire Department. I retired with the rank of lieutenant. In my time serving there, I was, again, an officer with that fire department. I was a paramedic, ran on the ambulance as such there. So my experience coming from that is command structure. I've helped a lot of people over my years, in that public sector. I guess if you call it a public servant is what it is. I get a lot of gratitude out of it. I've helped a lot of people. I've had a couple saves, that really made a difference in people's lives. Everything all the way down to just talking to some people in their despair, unfortunately, we got them at their worst in their life and we made it better. Biggest thing I can ever say about that is everything is an emergency with that. And we just get there and we try to make it better as a public servant and a fireman, a first responder. And I still give it up to the guys, especially now with everything going on in the world. It's really tough. With that being said, my experience also coming from there, I'm NIM certified. It's the National Incident Management System, which is something that takes governmental agencies, non-governmental agencies, private sector, and we all come together with a plan. That's what we're dealing with now. And you're dealing with that every day. And it basically puts guidelines out there. And I'm versed in those guidelines and those modules. So that definitely makes a difference. My love and my heartfelt part of that is that's why I want to continue with the county board. My heart is in public service. I want to be able to hear the people, what they're thinking. If I can help them and guide, the board, or just basically follow the board's guidelines to try to help people and such. And as a business owner, I'd like to say being a business owner is just like the county board. It's not. In a business, I make the decisions. I evaluate a product. If it's not good, we switch the product to something else that is valuable. In business, I'm out there to be profitable. Where the county board is, I know there's a lot of restraints and litigation stuff we have to do, with policies that we get handed down from the state and such like that. Our hands are kind of tied with a lot of stuff, and we have to work within those budgets too, which makes it tough. So
very, very good. So county board members, and we're going to cover a range of things, Mike. County board members will occasionally get asked community-based questions by the media, by constituents. You with your background in particular, it's interesting to ask this question. What's your thoughts on the local COVID response? What even you like, don't like, any feelings on the local response? That's the part we have the most control over. Just general thoughts, perceptions, concerns about the go forward, anything like that.
First off, what we've been handed, we can prepare all day long. We've done disaster preparedness and the fire service. We've done it with the government agencies. We do mock plane crashes. We've done, mock shootings and stuff like that, mass shootings. It prepares you to the point that you can try to be organized, but no one was ready for this. I see that, and I think Winnebago County is doing the best they can, and my hats are off to you. The biggest thing I've seen is the public wants information. They don't like being left in the dark, because you're going to have two sides. You're going to have people that are scared and radical, or you're going to have the people that, well, I don't believe them, so I'm going to go out and do what I want to do. I see you on TV every day giving your briefings and such like that. The Winnebago County Health Department's excellent. The response center is excellent. I give it up. We're doing the best we can, and we just got to stay on top of it and put our ear to the ground. Let's listen to people. How many people are being healed? How many people have been through this? When did this start? How long are we going to be quarantined? That's the biggest scare for people, being locked at home and such. And I think the information is going out. I'd like to see a little more, but at the state level and the county level, we don't know yet, but I think it's being handled very well.
So if you became a county board member, this is something that Keith, you may want to jump in on this with your background. Mr. McDonald's talked about the fact that he'd like to see, and way before the COVID stuff, that as a board that we at a kind of across the board level take more interest in the preparation or the planning readiness, just for a board awareness about what all goes into emergency planning. Not that the county board will get involved in the operational side of any of that, but just for an awareness, for an understanding type thing. What thoughts what would you think would be good, standard operating procedure for a healthy county board in terms of things they may want to consider being exposed to, trained on, awareness around, related to just any emergency related response items?
Was that directed to Keith or myself?
If Keith, you want to jump in, go ahead. But if you want to start off, Mike, that's fine. Just any general thoughts on that.
In general, the thoughts is the preparedness. And the biggest thing we have to look at is infrastructure of the county government. And we have to look at life safety, what we're able to provide our first responders. Our first responders are the first ones that kind of deal with this situation. So we have to have their budgets in line and make sure they're prepared, at least with the minimum. PPE, everybody hears about PPE. And with my experience with the fire department, we've always been adequately supplied with that through Winnebago County and, our budgets within, but it can be exhausted really fast. Proper use of gloves. It's one patient glove, then we're changing our gloves and we can go through gloves so fast. The same with our respirators and N95 masks, the same thing. It's one-time use. We're working with one patient. Guess what? Now we got to throw that out and we got to re-glove and we need to put a PPE mask on, another mask. And I've been in situations where I've had patients where I've re-gloved 4 or 5 times, and like I say, we go through those things really quick, those supplies. So as the county government, we have to make sure those budgets are in line, that we protect that. And the education part of it is definitely need to be out there in the transparency. To this pandemic or epidemic or anything, we have to be transparent to the public, because if we can't control the public to the point that we're giving them the correct information, then they panic and then we cause a lot more problems for everybody else. So all the way from our sheriff's department to our city police departments to our first responders, we just need to be prepared there.
Mike, I think part of the chairman's comments are based on the fact that about a year ago, I took NIMS 300 and 400. A lot of great information on high-level stuff there with the NIMS system. I spoke with Chief Gershon from Rockford. He's offered to help facilitate a 4 or 5 hour class, NIMS class, a really watered-down NIMS class just for elected, so that we've got a better understanding of our role in the incident management system. From your unique perspective of being a retired lieutenant, what are some of the things you think the board could use from a water class? What would some of the takeaways be?
On the NIMS, a lot of it is about structure and chain of command. It's basically who reports to who reports to who and how long it's going to take to get there. If we're all throwing out information trying to make a difference, we have to talk to that upper person, be it the chairman, then be it the sheriff, then be it the chief of police. We have to have that structure. I think that's the biggest thing I've ever learned, is the chain of command makes the information flow through work effectively. Then we have to understand where we can draw from. We have to understand our public sector, our private sector. What assets do we have around? The county board, oh, we need this. Well, who can do this? If we don't have compile a list of who has this or who can produce this, it's going to make it tough to get it. Biggest thing I've seen, with the state governor is fighting over getting respirators and such like that. And it's a bidding war. We don't want to be into a bidding war, but yet we don't want to carry so much surplus that it kills our budget. But I think that's what the take is out of NIMS. It's basically giving those guidelines to help us if we ever run into a situation. I totally agree with the board should see those modules and those guidelines, because everybody will pick something up out of that. I think it's very beneficial.
Thank you, Mike. Any follow-ups on that, Mr. McDonald?
No follow-ups, thank you.
Thank you. So the other hat, you wore the public safety first responder hat. You've also wore the private sector business guy hat, where you're dealing with budgets and that type of thing. Let's talk budget. Tomorrow night, the county board will have a finance committee meeting, and they're going to get, for the first time, some revised revenue projections based on some accounting for the COVID situation and all that that is. Obviously, that'll be a very tough meeting. How does a guy who's, you know, tends to probably be pro public safety, wants to see proper funding around all things public safety, reconcile the fact that we are going to see significant revenue reductions on an already tight budget? Obviously, you've probably been aware of the county's tight budget. Coming in as a board member, how do you make all this fit? How do you reconcile the need to provide service with budget realities? Any just general statements, and we could get into more specifics?
You know, the general thing that we're going to come into, and it's going to be tough, effective listening. We need to get in and effectively listen to the problems, who needs what, our needs and wants, and where we need to go to the future. What we need to maintain and operate the county to keep us open is kind of the word, to keep us productive and going forward. You know, budgets, you know, we can't shove it all in one area, basically. We're not going to be able to take money and just shove it in one area, but we're going to have to move it around the county where it's needed.
You coming in, a new board member is going to come in, and pretty darn quick, the true budget cycle will commence. It's a several month appointment, but in that several months, budget's going to be a primary hot topic, whether you'd be on a finance committee or not. It's a central item. The board may be asked to consider revenue increases, meaning a tax increase. Not locking you down to anything. You haven't seen the budget, you haven't seen updates, but as we attempt to meet the needs of the community with services, what are your thoughts on considering revenue increases or a potential, whether that's property tax increase is one example? Would that be something you'd at least consider, or would you rule that out at the beginning before any other discussions?
Anything with increases, it goes again with transparency and education to our voters, to our public. We need to educate them why we need this. You know, anytime being a business owner and stuff, taxes are tough. It's all budgeted in. When I ran a business, I budgeted in taxes. But if they gave me a 10% hike or a 5% hike, then I'd have to adjust my lifestyle or my budget to pay more taxes. And I think that's the same with the public. As long as we educate them, and I think everybody together across the board is understanding this pandemic and what it's doing to our budgets, we're all going to have to bunker down, and basically everybody's going to have to maybe chip in a little more to share. It's going to be tough. It's really going to be tough, but I think the education, we just need to be transparent and collaborate with our citizens and just let them understand why it's going this way.
Gotcha. Let's talk about the mental health tax. Back just a few months ago, there was an election, and in that election, the community enthusiastically embraced, investing in mental health services in the community. What are your thoughts on the role of the county board? In specifically, there's a new mental health board that's been approved by the county board. How much room or latitude do you think that the mental health board should have versus how much control or involvement the county board should have in the mental health funding allocation? Because an X amount of dollars will come in designated for mental health services. There's a mental health board. How do you see that relationship between the mental health board and their direction, and then the role of the county board, perhaps?
The way I understand it, the mental health tax is a certain percentage that's going to bring in X amount of dollars. And that's a projected budget, because we don't know exactly what it's going to be. The mental health board, if they're going to regulate and such and make sure it goes to that, that's what the taxpayers are going to want to see. That's what I would want to see. But they need to operate within that budget. The same there. As the county board, overseeing it, we're just basically going to pull the influx in. We're going to bring the tax in and then allocate it out to that board is the way I would understand it. But again, we need to support that board and make sure it's successful. The mental health tax was something that was needed, when Singer got shut down and such like that, not to get into that. I was on the fire department at that time. And, we'd have some patients that had those needs of a facility and we weren't able to give them, all we could do is bring them to the emergency room. And then now our hospitals, then they're dealing with that. And are they qualified to deal with it? Yes or no at that point? Yes, sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. And then they go into patient hold. Now they're holding that patient for 24 hours or something. And then what happens? They get sent back out into the public. Did we solve the problem for that person? So I think it's something that's definitely necessary, and we had to do something to allocate that. And I think with the mental health board, I think working in conjunction with the Winnebago County Board and overseeing things and with the input of our constituents, everybody chipping in, I think we'd be fine to delegate that out and get it going.
Okay. What questions do you have for us, Mike? Any questions for me, for Mr. McDonald, that you have at this time?
You know, the biggest thing is, coming into the board, I'm excited about as a public servant and stuff like that. And I want to do my best I can. I like I say, I watch the news every day and such like that. I think you guys are doing an excellent job, what you have to deal with. And I thank you for that. And everybody I know that I've been talking to is the same thing. Everybody thanks you for that.
Let's talk about your district responsibilities as compared to the overall county responsibilities. So it's just been my perception of comments I've heard from county board members. County board members have a unique role where they represent their constituents, the constituents in their particular district. In your case, District 4, that makes up part of Rockton and South Beloit, of course. But then there's other decisions you make that of course, affect not only the people in your district, but the entire county. I've had board members say, hey, I represent my district first, the rest of the county second. And I've had board members say the exact opposite. What's your view in terms of the balancing act between meeting district needs and then county-wide needs?
You're right. It is a balancing act, and Winnebago County as a whole, and we all live in that area. And yes, we have districts, but we all have needs. And in those needs, we have infrastructure, let's say roads, schools, public safety, streetlights, et cetera, public works, we have all that stuff. So as the main budget comes in, it pulls in from each district. I think it can be divided evenly, but I think there's major projects that need to be done in other areas that are dilapidated. We need to fix that as a whole, because if we're not good on one part, we can't be great on the other part. That's with everything going on with small businesses shutting down. And that's going to be one of the biggest things we're going to run into after this coming out. Small businesses could be failing. Cherryville Mall was always one thing I've seen. The days of the mall thing is kind of gone by the wayside. Everybody shopped online. But what are we going to do with that structure that's in our community? Are we going to repurpose it? Are we going to help them there? Roads, that's always something. Sometimes people don't understand, hey, roads wear out. It's like tires on your car. We got to always fix those. And we may have some major projects, but that's where we forecast. That's where we budget. But I think it evenly needs to go across just to make us great as a whole. And that's what we need to do. It's back to the Transform Rockford initiative. We need to be great again. We need to bring industry. We need to bring business. We need to work together and make it great as one, because everybody goes and uses the same facilities around Winnebago, the parks and such like that.
So you probably are aware that Winnebago County has a landfill, and that landfill has garbage that goes into it from, residents of Winnebago County. We also have the importation of garbage from other communities in which we get a particular fee called a host fee. And those dollars have been designated through county government, through the county board for years, related to special projects, usually economic development focused special projects. There's some discussion right now. First of all, I'd ask any general thoughts on the use of the host fee fund to date, anything you like, don't like. Two, there's some discussion about during tough financial times that we are seeing, potentially here right now, repurposing funds from the host fee fund away from special community projects to maybe more meeting internally driven needs. Any thoughts on host fees generally, or specifically about the your thoughts on potentially repurposing host fee funds for internal use almost exclusively.
Again, as a whole, we didn't foresee this coming. I mean, it's a disaster in my mind, and we have to treat it as such. So with budgets and budgets restraints, if we're going to be losing X amount of dollars into our budget, yes, we need to move that money around. We need to move it around where it's going to be best needed. And that's where we need to rely on the county board to make the right decisions where that money is going to be allocated from and where it's going to go. That's, again, that we have to survive as a whole. We need to make the community great and take care of these things that, you know, people are, again, their businesses are failing. We got to be able to help them, maybe, or the infrastructure or first responders and such like that. We need to be able to move that money around.
I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm not asking it to be divisive or play gotcha at all.
Okay.
I had to ask the last guy, put a tough question on the table in a different vein, but I ask it, and I think Keith could appreciate, just so it's out there and you have an opportunity to respond to it. As a running to replace a Republican, you know, the person who was the left was a Republican, so we need to replace it with a Republican. If you can help us understand and speak to the idea, you know, are you a Republican, number one? How do you address, you know, voting history around primaries? Just any general thoughts, because that may not be a major issue for some folks. Other people, they may want that question addressed to help them get comfortable with you. So what are your thoughts about being a Republican, number two, voting history in the past or going forward?
With that, you know, my political party affiliation, I did register as a Republican. Yes, I wasn't in some of the primaries, the last one, especially with the COVID-19 thing. It was really tough on that. I think almost it should have been delayed to a point, but we were early into the stages of that. You know, past history, raising 3 children, one in college, working, basically burning the candle at two ends. It's not an excuse that, you know, maybe I didn't make it out to the polls, but anything in life, I mean, we get really busy. I mean, it's our civil liberty to vote, and I should be out more voting as well as everybody out there if you want to be your voice to be heard. But I do regulate along the Republican lines. But with that being said, I'm very bipartisan in that I'll work with any of the committee members and such, you know, on these actions. And that's what I like about the county board. It's been that way for a while. We have bipartisan lines. We work with each other very well.
So to confirm, you would consider yourself a Republican. You voted Republican in general elections, for Republican candidates in general elections, even if you've not voted in as many primaries. I don't want to misstate or speak for you, but that's what I'm taking from your comments. Is that?
That is correct. That is correct. I have voted Republican in the past. Okay. That's what I do deem myself as.
And then I'm sure somebody will ask me after, so I'll ask it you now. In the future, you'll be looking to vote in primaries, and when you do, I'm just asking. No offense. You pull a Republican ballot. I'm just getting at the Republican thing, so that's on the table.
Well, that's correct. That's correct. I will follow suit with the Republicans. That's what I deem myself as, for a lot of reasons in my different lives that I chose as a business owner and such. That's where I align myself with.
So Mike, clearly you're a busy professional guy, got a lot going on. The balancing of the two, the business hat and the public safety hat is, I think, interesting to a lot of people because, you know, when you look at county board dynamics, what are we talking about? The majority of our budget, a lot of it goes to public safety related items, and those tie into budget, right? That's where a lot of the money is, not all of it. But so you're always trying to balance the public safety, making that a priority with budget realities. But it strikes me, busy professional people that own businesses and have all the involvement you do, why now? Why the interest in serving on the county board now? What really, you know, got you to apply for this and show the interest you clearly have?
A lot of it was timing with the COVID-19 coming in, and with my experience from the private or the public sector as a fireman turned right. It intrigued me that, hey, look, I can finally give some input here, that I can bring a lot of knowledge with that. My heart has always been, again, in the public sector. And I think with my years of experience that I've learned, I could bring a wealth of knowledge to the board. And then another big thing with me, I'm a very effective listener. I listen to the problems and I study the problems. I'll actually dwell on the problems. I'll take them and I will sit here and come up with various, I'll weigh it out in my head. What if we did this? What if we did that? What if we did that? I'm a critical thinker. And then coming from the business sector with that as well. I've employed up to 30 people at one point. I've paid ST1 sales taxes and merit, and part of my budget there as well, and rents and such like that. So with that knowledge coming forth, I could use that as well for small businesses. Biggest thing I saw when I started small businesses was there wasn't a lot of help to get started. It was really a struggle from county and municipality. How do I get started? Which direction do I go? And that's something down the road, maybe get a committee to be able to help those small businesses to get started and transition through all that paperwork and such, and where they could maybe allocate some monies to get started.
Good. Any questions? I'll come back to you again or have Keith jump in. Any questions you have for us or Mr. McDonald, anything you want to jump in and ask that we haven't touched on at this time?
Yeah, I'll throw a couple questions out there, Mike. What do you think, what would you consider the top 3 reasons to even have county government? What are the top 3 things that we need to take care of?
The big things is controlling budgets. Infrastructure is the main thing. Public safety, I keep going back to public safety. Public education, our schools. That's the biggest thing I've seen on my tax dollars when I get that tax statement. It's like, whoa, here's District 205. Are we helping them? Are we enabling them to educate our children better? Are we giving them the proper tools? Is that budget being used correctly? I know we don't have a lot of control of it. We influx the money and we hand it out. But at the same time, you need to look at some of that stuff. And if we put our ear to the ground and listen to everybody out there and their opinions, I think we're going to get very educated there, what we could do with that.
Okay, thanks. The other thing, as a caucus chairman now for the Republicans, it's important to me to make sure that we work with Chairman Haney as well as the Winnebago County Republican Central Committee. Have you been reached out by them? Are there any ongoing conversations with the Central Committee?
As of right now, I have not been reached out to by anybody from the Central Committee.
Okay. Is it okay with you? I'm gonna pass your information on to them to kind of get you vetted through their system as well? Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, that'd be fine. Now, obviously, you're interested in becoming a board member. That tells me you've probably paid attention to a little bit of the news. As a board member, kind of flipping the question that I asked previously, what are the top 3 things you think we need to jump in and get doing? I'm not asking you to criticize the board, but what should the board's top 3 priorities be? Basically collaboration. I've seen some issues with collaboration from an outside aspect. As a public, we kind of look sometimes and it seems it's been chaotic, but there's a lot of stuff going on right now as well. That's why we have some chaotic, but collaboration between parties, which we do well to a point, but I think we could do better. Transparency is another part of it. I think that's another step in the board that we need to do. That's basically the main 2 things that I can think of. Thank you. Mm-hmm. You're still muted, Frank.
I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. So as we wrap things up, anything you want to leave with anybody watching, with Mr. McDonald, myself, just why you believe you're a strong candidate for this. This would be an appointment that would go between now and basically the end of November. There will be a special election. What are your, I guess first, what are your intentions? Obviously, you would serve for the rest of this kind of mini term, the next several months, through an interesting budget cycle at a very interesting time. Is your goal today to just do that? Do you have a dual goal or an additional goal of also serving and running for that, in that position? That would be a 2-year term if elected. Everybody's up in 2022. But, do you have one goal of just serving the next several months? Do you have a dual goal of then potentially being the person that is with us through 2022.
Yeah, first and foremost, my goal is to get in and learn what I can from the board. Being a new member of the board, I'm going to be, again, effective listener. It's going to be a very tough 4 months, either we're coming out of this or we're going into it. I don't want to keep going back to the COVID-19, but there's a lot going on with that. So coming in as a new member, I need to be a very effective listener, work with everybody in there and on the issues and the things we need to forecast, look to the future and see what's going on, as well as what we did in the past. Post-evaluation is going to be another thing down the road we need to do. What did we do right? What did we do? We could have done better. What can we do in the future? And then in the second part of that running, yes, I definitely want to run at least, for the 2-year term after that as well, and not just to fill in. I want to be there for the long haul and give my knowledge.
Gotcha. Any other closing comments, closing thoughts you want to share with anybody watching, with Mr. McDonald and myself?
Nothing more than what I've seen you see on TV and such like that. Just follow our lead. Let's get through this together. Let's be safe. And well as the board, just keep up the good work. And let's get through this together.
Mike, thanks so much for your time. Mr. McDonald, any final questions or comments?
No, I don't. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you for your time. We will follow up and be in touch. To Mr. McDonald's point, I'm sure you're going to have maybe board members, maybe folks from the community, other elected officials, maybe folks from the central committee reach out to you and try to get to know you a little bit. So, don't be surprised if the phone rings or emails pop through.
Nope. I'm available 24 hours. Give me a call. I totally understand as part of a board member. It's going to be, if I do get in, I will answer that phone and I will do my best to get you the answer.
Well, thank you, Mike, and really appreciate you stepping forward and showing interest in this. It's a big deal to put yourself out there like that. So thank you very much and be safe.
Thank you. You guys be safe too.
All right. Thank you. Mr. McDonald, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good night.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
You too. Be safe.